So I'm Carissa Winters with Innovation Collective, and I am so happy to meet each and every one of you. I mean, wow, look around this room. It shows what an amazing community we have, how we all want to succeed and we all want what's best for ourselves and the community and each other. All of you out there come from different walks of life, but yet we're all connected in the sense that we all want those things and we're striving to achieve those things in our community. And I'm so happy that we have our success team members here that have championed this and been behind this, and UHV as well. If you're a member within that, can you please stand up so we can all give you a big round of applause? We appreciate each and every one of you. These people believe in our community, and they have just been so wonderful for us and making innovation happen here. So I also want to take a moment to introduce somebody who's been really such a main part of this and getting this to Victoria, Ken Caldwell.
Hey, I didn't fall down when I made the big step there. Well, welcome. This is a great turnout. It's really great to see everyone here and very exciting for me, both personally and professionally. I mean, you guys who have heard me before know that this has been a real labor of love for me. I have been an entrepreneurship professor before I was Dean of Business Schools, and I really feel that entrepreneurship is a key to economic development in a community and something that is really going to help and be transformative to the Victoria region. And it's been greatly fulfilling to me over the last year or so to find out how many people in the region agree with me, and not only agree with me, but are willing to really, really firmly support this vision. It's hard to not support Nick when he gets going, but it's been great, and we have had a great start. I think Carissa's doing a great job. We've already had a number of events going on, although this is our first sort of formal one, and I think the best is yet to come. So, keep your eyes peeled, join the Facebook group, and hold on. It's going to be a wild ride, and it's going to be very exciting.
Thank you, Ken. Now I would like to bring up our founder, Nick Smoot.
Hey, thank you, Carissa. Really quick, I want everyone to give Carissa another round of applause because she really has. She's been, I know many of you have had a chance to talk with her, but she has been working tirelessly alongside of the success team, and now many of you to really bring this together. And if you look around this room, many people didn't know each other before they've been in this room. Some have, but there's starting to be a common thread, and it's this person beating the drum who, today I met somebody who was at breakfast, and Carissa met them, and she goes, hey, you need to come tonight. And I met them here. And now they're walking around meeting other people that they're with. And the vision really behind Innovation Collective, for those who don't know, it's really simple. That every single person has magic in them. And that we have so much to give, and we can get so busy doing so many things that we forget that. And in a community, yeah, we have all these different programs that are fantastic, but where's that one space we all come together where you've got UHV and the city and the county and VEDC and all these people hearing inspirational stories that kind of help us think a little bit different, we talked about this with somebody earlier, gain some confidence in nonsensical big ideas, share those ideas. You were talking about Chick-fil-A. You have employees doing jobs that no other Chick-fil-A has, right? That's weird. But it's working for you. And those are the things that, where do you get to share your weird ideas, get feedback, get support, get accountability? Because every single person in here, 100%, you've got something extra still to give. But the question is, where do you go to have that conversation? And more, we want this to be that place you can come to. And if you don't know about all the stuff that we do, we have fireside chats like these that happen every single month, where you're going to hear stories from local people who have gone through the battle. They're going to tell real raw stories. You're going to do Q&A, and we're going to start to see this kind of group think around positive forward momentum and what it takes to build things and make things and do the hard work. It's not easy sometimes. We have this thing called Coffee and Concepts twice a month, where you get to share your ideas about what you're working on, what you need help with. We talk about innovation news, and in that room, you don't have to have a business plan. You just say, I got a crazy idea. And then everyone in the room starts working on it. I have seen nearly 100 plus businesses launched in there, ranging from small businesses that employ 1-2 people to companies now worth over $100 million who started in those little rooms of people just sharing the crazy ideas. We then have these things called summits, and the story summits happen every 3 months, where we fly in experts from around the nation, and they come here and they tell stories of what they wish they knew about life when they were younger and about business. And these are people like one of the first ones that's flying in here. I've already met with him. He's going to come down from Seattle. He is the world's largest buyer of renewable energy. He heads up all renewable energy for Amazon. And we're talking to the head of Corp Dev there that does all their venture investing. So we try and find these interesting people. The head of marketing at Virgin, she's an incredible human being that worked with Richard Branson. And so they'll come here, and we get to hang out for like a Friday night and then all day Saturday. Out of that, it launches into these little experiences for leadership, where Carissa has one she's doing that's a book club right now, and there's, I think, like 20, 30 people going through this book. We have another one called The Great Eight. Maybe you saw it on the screen. But The Great Eight is 8 areas of human flourishing that we review as creators and entrepreneurs and builders. We talk about our self-talk, money management, our health, relationships. Because I don't know if anybody's ever built a business. Put your hands up if you ever built a business. Okay? Keep your hands up. You remember that moment you look in the mirror and you're like, I don't feel like I'm feeling that healthy. Right? Whenever that stress hits you, whatever it is, you're feeling like pants don't fit right, like I'm a little more stressed, I'm not sleeping well. Who's lost sleep in a business before? Yeah, it sucks. And where do you get to talk about those things? This is the community and the group we get to build that with. And who has a dream for a business they still want to build? Go ahead, put your hand up. Okay? Keep them up. Look around the room. You have ideas that you want to do. These are people that have things they want to build. Those pathways become key experiences where we can help grow and build those. We have another one called Studio. So we have Explore, Book Club, Grade 8, and Studio. Studio is where you do your venture companies, and you work with venture capitalists, other entrepreneurs and founders of big companies, and we do a big pitch day at the end. They have an annual big festival all together. A lot of things. You'll get it, but I want you to just understand this. You being here tonight is huge. Thank you to you for showing up, but more importantly, this community, I believe, is on a rocket ship to helping it feel and be a place where you can build your dreams, and you can stay here to build those dreams. You don't have to go anywhere. And it's up to us to build that kind of environment. And it's not just about money. It's about emotional support. It's about encouragement. It's about better ideas, all of those things. So help each other along this way. Be kind to each other. Make new friends. And let's build something special. Be sure to stay in touch with Carissa. And again, thank you so much for letting us be a part of this journey with Victoria. It's going to be something special. And give it 2 years from now, we're not going to recognize this community with all the startups popping around here, and not in a way that ruins the town. I want to be very clear about that. Our goal is not to make this into San Francisco with like $40 avocado toast and people breaking all the windows and having to board them up. That is not the game plan. Hey, you'd all shoot me. Y'all shoot me. But what this is about being a place where people can chase their dreams. And we do it in a very Victoria way. So let's make things, let's build things, and let's ship great ideas and products that are like, meh, and then we'll make them better as we go too, because it's always not about being perfect. So with that said, I'm going to turn it back over to Carissa, and thank you again for everybody being here.
And I would like to welcome up to the stage an amazing member of this community that's done so many innovative things and given back through mentorship and so many other ways, Don Poor. So there's your microphone should be right there. Sit here? Yes, you're going to sit there next to Nick, and yours is right there.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you very much for having me. Is my mic on?
Yes, you got it. So we are so glad to have you. I mean, as soon as we told you about it, we're like, yes, I would love to do this in my community. So I appreciate that. And this is a talk where it's just us talking, learning about each other. It's really nice because it just flows naturally, and it's a good thing. So
I think I turned my mic off.
There.
That was fantastic. And I'm going to jump in and out on a couple moments here and there. And this really is at the end. We're going to have a Q&A, but if something sparks you as a question you want to ask, just stick your hand up. If it's a respectful question, let's jump in here and have a conversation. Because this really is about, let's unpack his world. This guy is smart, from what I know. I've read about him, and apparently he's got things to say. And he's built things. He's worked with the SBA. I'm amazed how that machine works. He knows how to work inside of it. So let's ask questions along the way in this conversation.
Well, it's been a long time since I've done SBA work, but I have done it. Thanks for having me, everyone. I really appreciate you guys thinking of me and having me here as the first speaker. I realize there's a lot of pressure on me to make this worthwhile because there's others in the audience that are going to be sitting here soon, I hope. So how many entrepreneurs? I couldn't see from the front row that I was in. Quite a few, so good. We got a lot of material to use. So anyway, thanks for having me.
yes, of course. And so if you could just kind of tell us about yourself, where did you grow up and what kind of family did you come from?
So it's a good question. I grew up in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and I grew up in a really good, loving family. I was pretty fortunate in that regard. However, I'll say that, and I'm going to get into some vulnerabilities here. I hope that's okay with everybody. My parents divorced when I was 5 years old, and for 11, till I got to be about 11 years old, I was without a father figure, and I truly believe that the worst experience you have is the worst experience you have, especially if you're young. And so that made some traumatic changes in me in terms of issues I was dealing with, and I also learned to be very self-sufficient. I had to figure out how to fix things for my mother. If I wanted to put a toy together or build something, I did that, and so I got pretty innovative at a young age. But anyway, it was a struggle as a kid, and I think that it sort of forced me to become somewhat self-sufficient. I was really lucky when my mother got remarried when I was 11 to a wonderful man who eventually was my best man at my wedding and still a very influential person for me today. So that's a little bit of my background growing up. But, getting out of high school and, trying to go to college, I really didn't want to go to college. I had a girlfriend, and I wanted to be home, and I wanted to work and, be with my girlfriend. And my parents were really good at encouraging me to go to college, to give my young love a chance to happen or not happen without all the pressure of being all in. And I went to college, and it was a bit of a struggle at first, but eventually I realized this was something I needed to do if I wanted to achieve anything.
And so where did you go to college?
So I ended up going undergrad to University of Tulsa, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, of course. I was a mechanical engineering major. I did that because it was really the only thing I understood. Being a person that uses his hands to work on things, that was the one major that made sense to me. And there was also a period of time when I was in high school, my father knew somebody else who had gone to Tulsa who was a petroleum engineer. He just graduated. He was from our hometown. And he had gotten a job for $38,000. And my dad was just dumbfounded by this. And he was, just going on and on about it, my stepfather. And I just heard it, and I'm like, God, that is so much money. I can't, if I really want to go make money, I can go into engineering, and I'll, that'll be it, and I'll make it, and I'll make my parents proud. And so I sort of had this little nugget of something to try to achieve, but I really didn't know how I was going to get there. I was not a very good student in high school. I really wanted to work all the time. I had a fireworks stand when I was a kid. I had a bike shop in my basement when I was a kid, work on bikes in the neighborhood. I got out of school at noon every day for the last 2 years of high school so that I could go work and make money. School just wasn't my thing. And, but eventually I realized this is something I've got to go do. It's just part of the process.
Would you do it again?
I would absolutely do it again.
One of the things I want to point out, too, that he said, who else felt like school wasn't your thing? Yeah, look around. We're weird, and it's okay. There's people like us. And one of the most important things that happens at these fireside chats is that we start to realize it's people like us do things like this. like what Don has built. And even when he talked about when he was a little kid, out of self-sufficiency, he had to learn to put things together and how that became a superpower. And a lot of times, like in our broken moments or like the little things that we get stuck having to do, and we find out that it gives us a love for something that becomes a whole career path. And, no one's life is perfect. And it's in those little things. I think it's a great thing. I'm a parent, and sometimes I worry about, am I doing everything right with my kids? But for all of us, making sure that we still take the time to figure out how to put things together, take them apart, break them, it flexes our brains.
Yeah, as a parent, you should do that, I think. And everyone parents in different ways, and that's fine. But I remember my son coming to me, when he was about in 10th grade, and he wanted a new computer. And I said, okay, that's fine, but I'm not going to buy the computer. I'm just going to buy the parts. But you've got to figure out how to build it. And so he was like, awesome, I'm all in. And that's what he did. And he ended up going to college studying computer science.
Right.
Wow.
It's not something I could have predicted, but it was just something that I knew, was effective for me to be forced into something that I wanted to do like that and make progress.
So what was your first job?
So first job with the W-2. Yeah, so, fireworks stand, mowing yards, bike shop.
These weren't legitimate businesses?
That's right,
Is this what
that's
you're
right.
saying, Dan?
Just earning money. I was all about earning money anywhere I could. But my first W-2 job was when I turned 16. I got a job bussing tables at a buffet restaurant, and it lasted a week. So that was a teaching moment. Yeah. That's what we call that. We embrace failure.
What happened?
It was a crappy job, and and I didn't show up. After a week, I just didn't show up, and they called me and said, "Are you coming?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not coming back." And it was horrible and terrible. Like I said, it's a teaching moment. It was just one of those things that a 16-year-old makes a decision, and your parents dress you down for it, and hopefully you learn from it.
So what would you consider your greatest accomplishment in your professional life?
So I would say in my professional life, my greatest singular accomplishment by me was buying Diamond Fiberglass, the company I bought here in Victoria. And I say that only because it was an effort that I put forward on my own to go down that path, to exit the corporate world, to announce it to everybody that I knew, my network, which could have ended up in somewhat of a career suicide, I felt like, and to say, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to go find a company. I'm going to buy it. I'm not sure how I'm going to buy it. I don't know where I'm going to get the money from, but it's something I need to try to do. And I went down that path. It took, from the time I sort of really declared it to the time we closed, it was probably about 3 years. It took a long time. And I had some mentors, of course, and I was using mentors, but the work was happening on my own. I was doing it late at night while I was carrying a full-time job and pursuing companies. I interviewed probably 50 business owners in 2 years and made offers on 3 companies, and the third one was the one that took. And, my wife, Susanna, had, early on was very interested every time I met with a company, and then the deal would die and go away, and she'd be very disappointed. So she eventually stopped asking me about them, which is perfectly understandable. But when, I came to her and I said, I think I found the right company, this was going to work. And she said, well, where is it? I said, it's in Victoria. And she said, I love British Columbia. I said, no. On Highway 59 in Houston, that sign, you see it? It's like just out past Sugar Land a little ways. So anyway, after visiting with 50 business owners and doing valuations and talking and all of that stuff over years, I got pretty proficient at recognizing, potential success factors and in trying to find and buy a business. What's motivating the seller? Will they work with me? Are we going to be compatible? Because going through the closing process, requires a lot of compatibility and some give and take. And you have to have a rapport with the seller. And that was nothing that I knew when I started this journey. I just learned it along the way. And in reflecting back, I recognize it's exactly what it was. But at the time, I didn't recognize it for that. But found the business, entered into a letter of intent, started the financing process. I had relationships already started with 3 banks for SBA loans, and went to them with the deal. They all said no. I was also at the same time putting together an equity package, an offering memorandum to raise the money, the equity side of the money that I needed, and writing a business plan because I didn't know anything about fiberglass tanks. I understood manufacturing from my oil and gas background, but I didn't know anything about fiberglass or those markets. And so I was doing a lot of things at once, and the banks were saying no. I was getting some investor interest. I ended up raising the money, $350,000 from about 9 investors. And on my 10th bank, I got the loan that I needed. But it took me 10 times. And I had people telling me, after the 3rd or 4th, they're like, well, this deal isn't going to work. You're crazy. I'm like, no, there's a bank out there that wants to do this deal. They've got a portfolio that fits this kind of business, and they need, this business in their portfolio. I just have to find them. And every time I went and interviewed a bank, and every time they said no, I just got a little better and a little better and a little better at pitching. And eventually that bank said, yes, we're going to do the deal, and we celebrated and got the deal done and moved to Victoria with 3 kids under 5. And Susanna had a good job in Houston and was going to quit, and they said, well, why don't you move that down there too? So Victoria got a 2-for-1 in that deal.
Yeah, nice.
And her business has been here now for 18 years also.
So what do you consider your greatest accomplishment in your life outside of work?
Well, my family. Yeah, my wife and kids for sure. I mean, I could elaborate on that all day, but I wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for my wife, supporting me and being a part of what I was trying to do back in those days. And then once we got here, because, the real work starts after you buy the business. Mm-hmm. And of course, a lot of people in here know we've been through a lot of trials and tribulations in 18 years at Diamond, the fire being one of the major ones. But I don't count that as my accomplishment because I had a team when that happened. The accomplishment for me was just buying the business because that's what I did alone. But once you build a team and your team is really good and valuable, they can really get things done. But my family is, one of my best accomplishments, I think, personally. My kids are fantastic, doing very well, so I can't complain.
Do you have any tips or tricks on the ends of like how you think about your family or rhythms, like sacred cows that you're like, no one's going to touch this. We do this every year, every month, or because running a business, I've met many people who have great businesses and horrible lives, like personal life or family life.
Well, the reason I wanted to be an entrepreneur was just to be in charge of my life. I had worked in too many places where there were layoffs, or I'd work for a year on a project and then it would just get put on a shelf, and or we double the size of our little business and I would get a 5% raise. There were just too many things like that. And so entrepreneurship seemed like a great way to build an asset, try to build some wealth where I didn't have any, and also to have freedom. I wanted to be able to, go to softball games and dance recitals and things like that with my family. So I pursued that for this. And once I got the business, I expunged that theory and that philosophy throughout my team. And I said, this is what I'm going to do. And you can go do it too. It's a very important thing to do. We're all grown-ups and we expect you to take care of your responsibilities and get things done. But if you need to take time and go do something for your family, go do it. And by and large, people do a great job with that. I mean, you obviously have some people that take advantage and you deal with that. But for the most part, it's been really, really rewarding. And it's helped me build a culture and a team that's been very effective. But we do have, family trips and things like that are pretty sacred. I don't hold their feet to the fire. Mom usually does that pretty well.
So you've accomplished and done a lot of notable things in your professional life, but what is something that didn't quite work out for you?
Where does the list start? Yeah, I've had tons of things not work out, and all those things are just failures, right? They're things you learn from. I mean, from the 50 companies I looked at, before I found Diamond, those were all failures. And, since I bought the company, we've acquired, I think 5 or 6 businesses and started 2. 2 or 3 of those haven't worked out and have failed. We've had to shut them down and bring the tools to Victoria. But they're all learning experiences, right? And if you learn as you go, you get better and better and better. And I think success, really isn't a destination. It's more of a place on a path. And as you go down that path, when your successes start outweighing your failures, that's when you start to get into that zone of success and things are well. And if you can continue to learn from your failures, you'll have fewer and fewer of them. And success sort of becomes a state of mind and a place that you're at. But to me, it's never a destination, because you can feel like you're there and the next day it's gone. And I've experienced that.
And you're just talking about success. So how would you, in your terms, define success?
Well, just like that. Yeah, just like that. I mean, it's somebody that's been able to learn from failures and keep trying and keep going down that path and not give up. Entrepreneurship is hard. You said it best, Nick. It's a tough path, and it takes hard work and commitment, and you have to embrace the failures. You can't just ignore them or try to put them behind you. You actually have to embrace them and learn from them, and use those to propel yourself forward and get better and better and better. And I think failures are great. I mean, it's the way you learn.
I want to highlight that because I think that's a cultural thing we're garbage at in the United States as of late. Is a lot of people are kind of afraid of this idea of failing, and it's continuing to work its way into the cultural norm. I don't know why. If it's media, if it's social media, whatever it is, like everyone's got to look perfect. But just know this, like no one's perfect. And especially the only people who don't make mistakes are the people who aren't trying. And so you have an idea of who you want to be, go get it and trip over your feet. And now you have people around you in this room that'll help pick you up. Like that's kind of cool. And from there, not only pick you up, but like teach you how not maybe to do it the next time as you learn together. But it is so important to hear what he's saying right here, and that to become a muscle that the town as a whole, we all start to flex, flexing that failure muscle and celebrating it, high-fiving it.
Right.
It should be norm.
I mean, who in here has experienced failure that felt severe? Probably everybody, right? At some point, and that gets back to, the worst thing that's happened to you is the worst thing that's happened to you. And, you react accordingly to that. If you don't compare it to anybody else or anything else, it's going to really hurt. And you have to learn from those experiences.
And for someone asking you advice for how to be successful, what is something that you would tell them that would be really helpful to them?
I would say it's just a matter of having a vision, having a dream of where you want to be, and then doing the little things every day that you need to do to advance on that goal. I think that in my youth, I probably didn't know it. I didn't know it. I didn't know it until I went to graduate school that I wanted to really be an entrepreneur. And, I still had that vision that one day maybe I would own a business, and I always had these ideas of things I would build, or make something, because that's what entrepreneurship seemed to be at the time for me. It was always about starting something new. But, I just started doing the little things I needed to do, going to graduate school. When I was in graduate school, I eschewed all the investment bank jobs that my friends were taking, and I went and worked for an entrepreneur for minimum wage, just so I could learn from the ground up. And it was an immense failure, and I learned from that too. And I didn't make any money. And I went back to school, and I thought, okay, now I need to probably go get a job because I got student loans to pay, and I got a baby coming, and then I worked, and I realized, okay, this isn't working either, so how am I going to advance on my plan? And, I go get a job at a startup company. This is in the .com era. And I was like, now I can learn from other entrepreneurs that are trying to do it, except it's not on my nickel. And I did that for 3 years, and it was great. And during that process, I had this epiphany because we were trying to buy small companies that already existed and consolidate them. And I said, why don't I could do that? That's how I'm going to get there. And it's not like I planned this. It's just that I had that vision. And every day I was trying to go down that pathway. And I sort of put myself in a position with mentors and smart people around me where I could have that epiphany and then take the next step and act on it.
So if you were graduating college today, where would you start investing your time?
So that's a little bit of an unfair question. You gave me that question ahead of time, but it's really hard for me to say because I already have the knowledge of knowing where I'm at now. But I would say that it's very important to pursue your passions pretty early. And if it was me graduating right now, I would try to become an entrepreneur immediately. And knowing that, and I really believe this, that you've probably got 3 or 4 opportunities to reinvent yourself before you sort of need to settle into something and become proficient at it. I didn't get to this point till I was about 35. And before that, I was an engineer, I was a graduate student, I was a corporate guy in oil and gas, I was a salesman in a startup company, and then I was a consultant for an oil and gas company. And these are all things I did prior to becoming an entrepreneur. And they all had very good effects on, getting me down that path of entrepreneurship. But that's what I would do. And if I failed, I would do it again. If I failed, I would do it again. And I'd say, don't pursue it with reckless abandon, of course. It needs to be calculated. But you need to also know what your worst case scenario is and be ready for that. And that was something that, when we did Diamond, we had that. We talked about the worst case scenario. We talked about the company failing and owing the money to the banks and coming back to Houston and getting corporate jobs. And I'm like, I'll do that. It's worth a shot. And that sort of motivation has the, unintended effect of getting you down the road, right? When you're threatened with those sort of things, you stay up late, you lose sleep, and you solve the problems, and you propel yourself forward. So that's what I would do.
And so what is the best advice that you've ever received, and why is it important?
So with mentors, I get good advice all the time, and I have all my life. I mean, I'm constantly seeking out mentors, whether I do it or not. I just see people I respect and admire, and hear them say things that mean a lot, and I try to act on that, and I try to draw nuggets from different people in life that I look up to, and I've been very fortunate to look up to a lot of people. There are 2 pieces of advice that sort of stick out for me, though, and one of them is, and I repeat these a lot, but it's don't ask for more money, ask for more responsibility. And if you ask for more responsibility and you show that you can handle it, and it's okay to ask for help if they give it to you, but learn it, get it, the money will come, right? And that goes all the way to being an entrepreneur, right? I mean, if you are honest, in your place of employment about what your ambitions are, if you work for the right person, they can help you get down that path. And that will be valuable for you and them, because now you're both working together and have a common goal. So that was a great piece of advice, and I do say that a lot because we do get a lot of people to ask for raises. The other piece of advice I got one time, this was a little bit later when I was in that midst of trying to be an entrepreneur. Maybe it was early on in that process, but I was on a flight from Houston to Seattle, and I got bumped into first class, and I was sitting next to a guy who had a medical tech company in Houston, but he was flying home to his house in Seattle. And we just started talking, and he's telling me all about his business, and I'm like, that's just incredible. You're the successful entrepreneur, and I'm like, if you could give me one piece of advice, what would it be? And he said, do it now. Don't wait. Get it done. He's like, because the more you wait, the more you're going to put it off, and it's just not going to happen. And I took that to heart, and I really put my system into overdrive after that to go find a business.
So who is the most innovative person you have ever met, and what do you respect the most about them?
So I've met a lot of innovative people in my time. I know of a lot of innovative people I've never met that I'd love to meet. But one person comes to mind in my industry. His name's Tom Hegel, and he's passed away, but he bought a fiberglass tank business right around the same time that I did, and this is in South Dakota. Except he bought a business that was failing, and he bought it out of just the assets, out of debt. So he took that business and reimagined it completely, and built a new plant. And if you don't know anything about what we do, but you probably understand the concept of batch processing versus like assembly line processing. And our industry is very much batch, and what we did at my company was batch processing. and it's extremely inefficient. And he imagined a assembly line type system, and he built that. And he put a robot in it. A robot in a fiberglass tank shop, and just made a business that was immensely profitable, double the profits of what anyone in the industry was doing. And then not only that, while he was doing all of this, he was calling all of us competitors. This is a guy with a finance background, right? He didn't have any manufacturing experience or anything, nothing in our industry. He starts calling all the competitors, me, introducing himself, wants to come visit, how you doing, just super friendly, and building relationships in the industry, which is a very weird thing to do in our industry because it's a lot of mom and pops and everybody's closed-chested about it all, and and let's compete and not be nice to each other, at different conferences. And it was just a breath of fresh air, I thought, and I built a really strong relationship with him. Did some hunting with him. He went up to visit him. He came and visited me several times. He's just a super good guy, and when our plant burned down in 2017, when we rebuilt it like his. And he gave me all those ideas, and he shared a lot of that technology with us. And our business has done very well since the fire. Much better than we could have imagined. And I give him credit for that.
Who's someone that you would want to meet that you haven't met?
Elon Musk.
Yeah. Let's make it a job. Let's try and get Elon here, and then Don and Elon can go out to lunch.
Talk about innovative. That guy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I agree.
So what are your top 3 books that you would recommend for everyone to read?
All right, so this is probably going to be kind of boring, but Rich Dad, Poor Dad, anyone heard of that? It's an old book. It's been updated a little bit by Robert Kiyosaki, but it's a really good book on the basics of building wealth versus cash flow, just having a job. And it teaches those basics. And if you don't really understand those basics, it's a great place to start. It's required reading for my children when they were seniors in high school, and they all have a copy of it. And not all of them really wanted to read it, but one of them did. One of them read it and really liked it. But anyway, I think that's a great book, and it's sort of just essential reading if you want to be an entrepreneur and you want to build wealth. Another book is How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie. I think that's a really good book and it is dated too, but it stands the test of time. But if you're an introvert like me, an introverted engineer, you need to have those skills to be able to network and meet people. And, Kiyosaki says, your net worth is your network. And I believe in that because you can't get things done without knowing people and having mentors and getting help. And learning from Dale Carnegie, you can learn how to just get to know people and get them to trust you and build a relationship with you. I think it's a really good book. So I had a couple of other books that I was thinking about. So if anyone's a classic rock fan, Red by Sammy Hagar. It's a really good book, and it's not a joke, but he's a rag to riches story, and he has become a very successful entrepreneur in his time. And so it's entertainment about rock music, but at the same time, there's a ton of really good lessons in there. And I'm going to say this other one, and my wife's not going to like it, but it's Hustle Harder, Hustle Smarter by Curtis Jackson. Does anyone know who Curtis Jackson is? Yeah, 50 Cent. Extremely successful entrepreneur, and tons of really good lessons in there on how to grow as a person and how to understand people and understand energy in a room, understand energy in situations. It's just, I think, a great book to read and understand more about entrepreneurship. So
I wrote that one down. I've never heard of that book.
Yeah, it's good. My wife, every time I want to listen to it in the car, she's like, "Oh, Curtis Jackson again."
Does he read it?
He reads it, yeah.
I didn't know if he rapped it or
great.
read it. So
There's nothing like a good audiobook read by the author.
Yeah, by the author, that's right.
Yeah.
So what do you believe that our area needs to focus on to continue to grow in an economically vibrant city in 5 years from now? How do you see that happening, and what do we need to focus on?
So, there's a bunch of things. I'll talk about 3. So one, I think, is this. We need to build better systems and support processes for the community so that entrepreneurs can thrive here. And I'm great that the Innovation Collective is here. This is happening. It's really, really cool. I want to meet entrepreneurs that want to start businesses here or even buy businesses here, and figure out how to help them. I'm doing that at Rice already with grad students that are already kind of going down this path. But it's harder to find people in the woodwork in a community because they haven't applied to grad school and they're hiding somewhere. So maybe this is a way we can draw them out. But we need to have more systems. I think it starts with this sort of program, and the universities are the next step. If the universities can offer ways to draw students into that, I think it'd be very, very useful. I think, too, the community needs to be an attractive place for people to want to come to. And I know Victoria is doing a lot right now with the downtown initiative, and I think that's got to be seen through. I think that will make a huge difference on the attractiveness of Victoria to investors and entrepreneurs, and I think that's something that needs to happen. Both those things are already starting to happen. That's great. The third thing that I think is really important, and I don't know that there's a solution for this yet, but the baby boomer generation, I think they control about $1 trillion worth of business value right now in the entrepreneurial marketplace across the country. And even Generation X, to some extent, my generation, a little bit older, are getting to this point where they may want to exit, especially with coronavirus. We're already starting to see it. So how do we get those businesses that are in our community to stay in our community? How do we get them to sell to other people in our community? Private equity money that's out there right now is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and they're paying more and more for business assets. And it's really hard as an owner of a business to not sell for top dollar. But if you're selling for top dollar to somebody who lives in New York City, what's that doing to the quality of your business, the culture of your company? And does that matter? And it probably does. To Victoria as a community, it matters a lot. So what can the community do to encourage ways for businesses to stay local with local ownership? I don't know.
Well, I want to touch on that. Actually, one question is, who in here would like to buy a business like that's in your future? Like you'd ever thought, like, yeah, I'd like to own one. Okay, like there's a couple hands in here. Good. You guys should connect. Like, and I'm not kidding. His process is ridiculous of interviewing 50 companies in 3 years. I have never heard of that, except for a PE firm that is going on. Like you're like a one-man PE shop.
Well, I did all of that on my own.
I know.
And now I teach people how to do it.
Yeah, it's insane what you did.
There's an entire program and curriculum designed around that process.
It's funny because it's illogical to someone who would look at the process, but it's 100% logical, like how you approached it. And upstate New York, we have Innovation Collective there as well. And one of the really significant problems there is all the manufacturing shops getting bought, all the jobs being outsourced, and everyone's starting to get a little bit nervous. Innovation Collective in Florida. One of the individuals who helped bring us in there was the largest employer in the county and sold his shop to a private equity person and went, now what are all my friends going to do? And he was very entrepreneurial, and so we're spinning up a building. There's a venture fund there focused on it. But in New York in particular, we're literally having a discussion about how to court the business owners and bring them into a process to help them get ready to sell a business. And then the other side is find young, hungry talent that wants to be taught and kind of like dating and matchmaking of like this group and getting the banks, in the middle of that. And that's something that do it. Like you have a weird expert who decided on his own. That's like, yeah, I'll interview for 3 years, 50 companies. He's a freak in the best way. Like you got an expert right here. Build that marketplace. No, but build that marketplace and crush Texas on that. Like go out and get all the other shops, right?
So I've got a question. You interviewed 50 companies before you got one that worked with Diamond Fiberglass. Why did Diamond Fiberglass work and the rest failed?
That's a great question. What was your name, by the way, for people who don't know you, but like everyone knows you?
Brian Billington.
It's a good question, Brian. And so I don't want anyone to think that interviewing 50 companies all happens the same way. My process was to network myself as much as I could to everyone I knew, and I asked every single person that I networked with to give me the number or name of somebody that might be able to help me, an accountant, a lawyer, a friend, whoever. And I would get another number, and I would network with that person and have more coffee and or more lunch. And then I would ask them for the same thing, and I'd start going down these paths until I got to a business owner. And when I got to a business owner, I would go meet that business owner, and they may or may not be selling their business. They don't know. but we'd just have a conversation about it, and I would learn from that. And some said, sure, I'll sell, but it's for super amounts of money. Others are like, well, why did you get my number? Who told you I was selling? Well, I don't know, but let's have a talk about it anyway. And so that's, every conversation was very different. But as I went through all of those businesses, about 1 in every 10 or 20 was a business that was legitimately for sale. And I had conversations with the sellers where I was making them an offer. And in 2 of those cases, the offers didn't work out. In one of those cases, we were only about 10% off on the agreeable price, and we walked away from the deal. And then they ended up selling for, I think $2 million more than what we offered them like 5 months later, which I was really upset about because my equity backer at the time didn't want to do the deal. He was too risk averse. But anyway, all those experiences just built up and gave me the knowledge so that when I walked into Diamond and I met the sellers, number one, they had already had a letter of intent fail, which meant they had a suitor, they had agreed on a deal, and the deal didn't go through. So they were kind of hungry, and they were experienced, and they knew what the value of the business was because they'd already kind of agreed on it. A lot of times you get business owners who don't know that. And then 3, they were just nice guys. People that I could connect with. And I knew that within 30 minutes of meeting them. And you don't understand that that's important until you've talked to 50 of them, that you're going to have a connection, because with lots of people, you don't get that connection. Lots of people are guarded and, blustery and just, tell you things that they think you want to hear. And they don't want to open up and be real about what they're trying to do. But these guys were like that. They were very real, and they were eager to help me. They believed in me. They're like, you're the right guy, and we want to help you do this. And I said, well, I got to write a business plan so I can raise equity. And they're like, well, if you did these 4 things, you would grow this business right away. And I'm like, well, why haven't you guys done that? And they're like, oh, because there's 4 of us, and we all have veto power. And, Bob out in the back, he doesn't want to do that. And I'm like, well,
was it family or partners?
It's just partners, yeah. But they were, they were comfortable partners, but they all gave each other veto power. And because of that, the business was sort of stagnated. Yeah. And so I saw it as a successful business that had opportunity to grow if I just went in and did the things that they said I should do. And I did, and it worked. We doubled revenue in 3 years. It was pretty wild.
And you've now 5X.
5X now, yeah. And that's through other acquisitions and started another business and just slowly built it up. It sounds like an overnight success, but it's been 18 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. And this is a Q&A portion of it, so you started off right.
Good job,
Does anyone
Brian.
else have any questions?
We'll free beer afterwards for you. Yeah.
Anyone else have a question? All right.
Down for the academic folks, tell them what you're doing at Forbes so that we can at least hear what we're exporting from Victoria right now.
You have to say your name for people who don't know you, sir.
So if I understand your question right, Bill, you want me to tell them what I do at Rice? Okay. So I teach 2 classes to graduate MBA second-year students. And one of the classes is called Enterprise Acquisition, and it's a course on how to go about the process of finding and purchasing a business. So the search process, networking, really learning about yourself and trying to understand, your strengths and, more importantly, your weaknesses and how you're going to mitigate that as a risk. Having seller meetings, doing valuation, doing financial analysis, writing LOIs, legal, banks, all that stuff. We teach all that in a course. And that's first semester, second year MBA. The second semester of second year MBA, right before they graduate, we do a lab. And the lab is basically putting those practices to work on the ground. So the students that join the lab are usually a smaller subset of the students that took the course that are really serious and want to get a head start. And so those are the ones that are going out and doing what I did, and doing it while they're still in school and they still have mentors and help. And so all we do is coach them through that process. So we meet every 2 weeks. We set goals at the beginning and then determine, how are they doing as they go down the path, and try to help them navigate the challenges. And to date, I've probably had 10 or 15 students that have bought businesses in 6 years once they graduated, which is pretty cool. And a lot of them are speakers in my class now. I bring them back in and have them tell their stories, which is really, really cool. But that's what I do, and I teach those two classes to a number of different ways, online and through Zoom and in person. So it's always sort of a mixture every semester of what I'm doing week to week. Susanna never knows.
Any more questions?
Yeah, there's one in the back. Yeah. In a business? Or in anything? Cool. It's a good question.
Well, yeah, I would just say that it's important to understand what your worst case scenario is and not to be reckless. I mean, there's risk in entrepreneurship, and certainly in the startup side of the world, there's a lot of risk because you're doing something that's unproven. In the business acquisition side, you have the luxury of buying something much less risky, looking at how it's been doing and then coming in and saying, okay, how am I going to make this better? Or am I just going to mess it up? What are the chances of me messing it up? That's how I looked at my company. I'm like, it's probably a pretty small risk that I'm going to come in here and totally flub things. But it could happen. And if it does, what's my backup plan? And that's what I try to tell my students early on in the process, because a lot of them get excited, and I don't want to oversell this as a career path because it's hard and it is risky. So you need to know what your worst case scenario is. So don't come in and just be reckless and do things, off the cuff. You have to be calculating. You have to understand what you're getting into. You got to know what the risks are, and you have to have ways of mitigating those risks.
Something he mentioned too about his team. He talked about having a good team around him, and I assume he asks for help because he really didn't know much about fiberglass, right?
That's right.
That's one of the things I've seen with entrepreneurs, especially early stage. You feel like you have to know everything because if you're creating a company that doesn't exist, it almost feels like you're trying to be this force of nature to make something happen, and truly, like, you are. Like, you're trying to change the current state of reality around you and bring something into existence, and that's insanity. But it's a lot of hard work, but you don't have to have all the answers. It's super okay to go out and build a team, and it doesn't have to be people you pay at first. Advisors often will step up and help kind of be a friend to coach you because they want to give back. And as the business grows, giving equity to them even as like equity advisors is a great move. And it, just know it's okay to say, I don't know, too. That's another thing that I think I picked up from you a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Bill?
What other type of businesses do you have your eye on to young entrepreneurs, especially in this?
Excuse me, sir. You have to say your name.
So, I don't know. I'm biased because of my background and experience, but I always look at manufacturing, and I think there's a lot of very interesting manufacturing businesses around. There's welding shops and fabrication shops. There's industrial services around Victoria. And those are all businesses that are going to be here for a long time, and they're not flashy, they're not sexy, but if they're owned by a baby boomer, there's a pretty good chance, and no offense to boomers in here, but there's a pretty good chance that their technology is deficient and you've got opportunities to make improvements. And that's what we always talk about in our class is when you find a business, what are the improvements you're going to make? And I remember one time we had a student bring a business in and said, here's the business, but I don't know how to improve it. And we said, all right, well, let's just get the whole class to talk and say what they say. And in 2 minutes, we had 50 things on a board written down of improvements they could make. And when I bought Diamond, they had one computer, one email address. Wow. This was in 2003.
Wow.
So, imagine that. And the technology in the plant was just as antiquated. So, we're just improving, and it's taken us from a sleepy business to one of the top in the nation in terms of our world and our market. So those are the kinds of businesses that I like and understand. I'm sure there are lots of others. I stay away from restaurants and consumer goods just because I think people are finicky and it creates a lot of risk. But as an engineer and that kind of person, that makes sense to me.
We have those events. We'll get your hand in a second. We have those events, Coffee and Concepts, that happen twice a month where people kind of talk about ideas. And that's a time for more discussion kind of amongst the group versus like sitting and listening to an inspiring and interesting story. But would you ever, maybe come, to one of those and share a little bit more in depth? Would anybody be interested in like kind of the M&A process? To me, that's super fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That'd be amazing. What was your name for everybody too?
Kenny French. So, Don, we were talking about operating system. And I'm curious, why did you sought them out? I tell people what they do, but I find myself, I'm not a very good manager. Those kind of systems really help.
Absolutely. So, one of the biggest challenges when you run a business is, how am I going to manage it, and what kind of philosophies am I going to have, and how do I have meetings, and there's all these things, and we learned the hard way that it's just very challenging. You read a lot of books, and there's very good management thoughts and ideas out there, and you try to implement, and you give a book to your team, and they say, oh, maybe they read it, maybe they don't, and you try to do something for a while, and it never takes. EOS, which is called Entrepreneur's Operating System, is a book written by a guy named Gene Wickman, and it's a system he put in place in a business he inherited from his family and ran successfully and grew that business tremendously and then sold it. And then he took that system, wrote a book about it, and now has built a nationwide group of consultants that help businesses implement that system. And one of the implementers in Houston is a Rice MBA graduate, more networking folks, and had already helped two people that I know that are Rice entrepreneurs implement, and they had tremendous success with it. And so when we emerged from the fire, I went to my team and I said, this is what we're going to do. I read the book, and it made a lot of sense to me. And we're going to hire the consultant, and we're going to pay them a lot of money to help us implement it. And that's needed because they're a coach, and they coached us through the whole process. And because we were spending the money on it, my team had to commit. And we had to do it every day and every day. And now it's a habit. And now it's like, it's automatic. And we see our consultant once or twice a year. We were seeing her quarterly before. We're taught to self-implement now, so we're not spending the money anymore as much. Eventually we'll be out of her, her realm completely. But, having that other party in there really helps people to be honest and communicate and really figure out what the problems are and figure out how to solve them and move forward. And not only are you doing day-to-day tasks, you're setting these goals. You want to get to this place in 10 years. What's that look like in year 3? How many people do you have? What's your revenues look like? Who are your customers? Okay, well, how's that look in year 1 if you're going to be there in year 3? And you sort of back up to this quarter, what are we going to do? And it's really, really effective. So thanks for asking about that.
Go ahead.
How you doing, Erica? In your experience, where's risk management? Six Sigma, Agile, Quantum, in these processes, movement, or even taking risks?
Yeah, absolutely, especially in manufacturing or any process-oriented business, which a lot of them are. Even restaurants are process-oriented. So understanding lean manufacturing and how to make things work smoother, I think is very important. And we've got Six Sigma people on our team, and that helps us a lot. We started doing lean manufacturing way before we did EOS, and it made a huge difference in our plant.
Let's maybe take like one more question, and then are you gonna hang around for a little bit after?
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Okay.
Matthew Albright.
Hey, Matt.
I want to ask you, I guess this is the perfect platform to ask you. I know working with you in the insurance realm, as far as the representative and working with your company, one of the things that we always come back to our office and I just one thing we notice is just the very strong work culture that you have, not only yourself, but with your executive team, all the way down to the rung of all your employees. You really notice that. And just like, man, just such a good grace, kind of mutual respect environment there. And I don't know if you could really give some insight as far as what you did to maybe establish that or strive for that and really put that in place. And from what I noticed when I go there to your business.
Yeah.
And was it always like that too?
Right,
Like,
right. Well, that's exactly the question. And this could be a long discussion. I'll try to make it very short. But I will say this, that when you buy a business, there's already a culture there. And if that culture doesn't meld with you, and it probably won't, it's going to have to change, because you can try to be part of that culture, but if it's not natural, you won't be it. And I tried to be the culture that was already at Diamond when I got there, and it didn't work. And it took me a long time to get comfortable enough to let people go that were troublemakers, that were valuable to the business, but not doing things the way I would do them. And I just had to get to a point where I'm like, I'll go do your job. I know I won't do as well, but I'll go do it, and you don't need to be here. And I had to do that a few times. And what happens is people see you do that, and if they're the types of people that respond to that, then they stay and they start to value it more. And I've been fortunate, over the time I've been there, is to build a team that reacts well to the way I manage people. And when I was in the corporate world, I swore to myself, if I ever got into business, that I would, do the family thing, very important, treat people fairly, and I'd be generous. If there was ever a question, I'd be generous first and ask questions later. And the people that have come through to try to take advantage of that, they don't last long. And the people that come through that value it, they stay, and they work hard, and they care. And over time, that's what's happened. That culture has just emerged, and it just has to do with me being me, and then me getting managers that are like me, who then do the same thing, and it just trickles down. And I can't say enough about my team. I mean, you guys have me here, but if we want to talk about Diamond, you're going to have to get my team here, my management team, because that's where the magic happens. It's not with Don.
Well, thank you so much. If we could have a big round of applause for Don Poor. Amazing job. Appreciate all of the things that you talked about with us. I know that I personally took away so much, and I'm sure you guys did too. And we're going to have in the lobby drinks and food, as you guys already saw, and mingling. So if you have a few more questions, I know he said he would love to chat about that. And I would also love to see all of you guys come to our next Fireside Chat. If you want to join our book club, IC Studio, we're also going to have the Grade 8. We have tons of pathways to create entrepreneurship, which I think we can all agree, as you said, is something that we really need in Victoria, in this community, to bring everybody together. And Innovation Collective, we're here for that, and we have the pathways and also amazing people to be mentors in our community. I've had so many people reach out, and that just shows what a great community and people that we have, that they want to give back in those ways. So thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. And Nick, thank you for being here too.
Oh, thank you. And last thing I do want to say, go find Carissa. She is connecting everybody to all the different ways for you to stay in touch. And get the word out. Help us. You guys are already doing a great job, but remember, and it doesn't have to be just entrepreneurs. Like, it's just makers, creators, builders, people who want to make things together. And everyone has a seat on the bus. Like, it takes all of us to build healthy companies. Like Don said, it can't just be just him. And so if you're like, I'm not an idea person, super cool. There's plenty of those people. And so we're all going to need to work together, but definitely invite somebody else next month for the Fireside Chat. Drag them along with you. You know that person that would just totally enjoy this kind of environment, the energy, and they've got that idea. So bring them here, and let's keep growing and building companies and build build that tomorrow we want, but today, and do it together. So thank you so much. Excited that you guys came. Give yourselves a round of applause, and Don, and enjoy. Thank Chick-fil-A, all the success team, everybody who's here.
Thank you.